Aquí está Magdala, ahí está las ruinas y ahí vamos a ir.
I think we are now in one of the most exciting places in the Holy Land because there is an old town, more than 2,000 years old, that is still to be excavated. So they are just starting and digging here and there, but we don't know really what we will find here. The surprise of the archaeology was very big, I have to confess. The project grew up quite a bit. I have so many anecdotes that happened during this period of time, many years, many people, many events, lots of processes. I felt all the time very much the presence of God. I felt divine providence at work in an amazing, amazing way. Many people had expressed that they feel in Magdala an encounter. Encounter in the Holy Land means a lot. You encounter the Bible becomes alive. You encounter the Gospels. Everything you see around Magdala, around the Sea of Galilee, in all of Galilee, was somehow drawn by Jesus in the Gospels. All of these things together, archaeology, spirituality, art, nature, volunteers, priests, consecrated, and the visitors themselves, because they meet, they mingle sometimes. And this makes from Magdala a very interesting place for an encounter. We realized that we were ministering to a very important place for all Christians and for Jewish as well, and could not be another simple place, but had to be something, I would say, special, if not extraordinary.
Okay, let's continue. On the bottom of this map of the mosaic, you'll see the word Jerusalem with an arrow. Of course, Jerusalem is to the south because we're only looking at the map of Galilee. So here is the S, our southern point of the map. And as we walk up to something I want to show you, I want to point out this right here. These two figures. It's like a border to this particular mosaic. And Maria Jesus wanted to put in the two types of figures that have to do with the family. One is a male figure and one is a female figure. And you notice they are repeated throughout this particular border. And so if you stop and think for a moment, which one is male and which is female? This is the female figure and this is the male. Both of them are important in our history of faith, in our family of faith. All right, let's take a look at this. It says Jacob's well, and it has an arrow, and it's pointing down. And that's because Jacob's well, which you can see in this particular mosaic scene, was in Samaria. And so you can see Jesus, who encounters a Samaritan woman at the well. He goes and he looks for her, just like we said a couple days ago when Jesus was looking for the hemorrhaging woman. He wanted to find her and really change her life. She became an amazing apostle for her town. If you remember, when Jesus went back, many of the people had been converted, if you read that part of the gospel. You see these beautiful mosaic here as well of the wheat. The weeds in the wheat is something that we read today in the gospel, in our mass. And if you look at the weeds and the wheat in this area, they actually look almost exactly the same unless you're very, kind of really up close and you're really looking to see which one is weeds and which ones are wheat. I'm just going to take a step over here to the right, and you'll see another very well-known scene, and that's Nain. Nain is actually an old biblical city, and this is what she did on this map. She put places where Jesus ministered and important places when he was alive. It's where Jesus walked, which is part of what we call Magdala. And so you have Jesus here with the widow raising her son. People being astounded in the background as he's been taken out on the litter. And so this is a very important scene in the gospel, and it happened right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is move up a little bit. We're going to see a road. It's not a Roman road, it's actually a more ancient road. It's the way of the sea. And here you can see it goes up, just follow that gray line, and we see that it goes right next to Magdala. We'll go up there in just 1 second. But Nain is very close to Mount Tabor. In fact, if you go there today, you'll almost always pass by those two places. Mount Tabor is an unusual mound in the middle of sort of flat plains. And of course, we see Jesus here with the figures of the 3 apostles who are saying, let's build 3 tents and stay here. Where you have Moses and Elijah speaking with Jesus. Now, I love this figure here. They actually use this for the symbol of tourism in Israel. It's 2 of the scouts that were sent in to reconnoiter the Holy Land, and they came back with these huge grapes. It's actually grape season now. Delicious. And just showing that this really is a blessed land. And of course, Maria Jesus put in some of the most important trees, like the acacia tree, from which the Ark of the Covenant was traditionally made, the rocks that held the 10 Commandments. And let's move up, because one of the most important places, of course, in Galilee for Christians is Nazareth. And here in Nazareth, you can see what type of scene they chose to put in. Of course, Jesus as the son working with his father, Joseph, in the carpentry shop. And then you have Mary. And Mary, showing feminine dignity, is actually studying. She certainly doesn't have a scroll, she's got a book, and that's fine, but it shows that her support of Jesus also had a lot to do with her own understanding of the scriptures and her own understanding and knowledge of God and the faith. All right, so here we're going to move over to an important place, and this is called Megiddo. You may have heard of Megiddo. It's a little bit further out toward the coast and south. Megiddo is a plain where there were battle after battle after battle because it was an important road that would take traders. You see, it is a Roman road. This red line here indicates a Roman road, where you would have trade between Egypt and the east, further east. And so this might be where Joseph was sold by his brothers, okay? And like I said, there's many battles that were fought here. So it's an important place in history. So let's go up here to a beautiful port area, if you've had the chance to visit Caesarea Maritima. And this is a beautiful place that Herod actually built to make it the principal port for trade in the Roman Empire with his kingdom. And it's the only place where you can find inscribed in a stone the word Pilate, Pontius Pilate. And this is also, of course, where St. Paul was imprisoned before he went to Rome. Now, see this little thing here? It sort of looks like a Purina sign in the United States. Well, that actually indicates a city. And that's something that they would do on some of the old maps. And so Maria Jesus imitated that as well. Now, Caesarea Maritima is close to Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel is actually a chain of mountains that goes this way down the coast. And that's why it ends up in a valley, which is where Megiddo, is one of those passes through the mountain chain. And so Mount Carmel, if you remember, is extremely important for a couple of reasons, mostly because of the prophet Elijah. We just celebrated Our Lady of Mount Carmel this week. The prophet Elijah was one of the first prophets out there. Remember, he actually challenged the followers of Baal, B-A-A-L, and they had that big competition out there where the fire came down from heaven and consumed the sacrifice, which was just a great place. But you can actually visit the cave where some of the prophets lived in Mount Carmel. And it's also beautiful. It's right next to the sea. It's in the Mediterranean Sea right there. And it's covered with flowers and trees. And that's why in the Song of Songs and in other places in the Psalms, they speak about Mount Carmel and its beauty, the plains of Sharon. All right, and then you have up here, let's just follow the coast for a moment. Haifa. Haifa was an ancient port, and you can see there was a lot of actually Christian settlement, still is today. And Haifa, again, was one of the main places where they would do a lot of trading. And up toward the north of this is the city of Akko. And Akko was important in antiquity. You see one of the Roman roads comes through here. Okay, but it's also very important because this is where the Christian pilgrims would dock when they were coming in to make their pilgrimage to the Holy Land. It was an important Crusader fortress for many decades. Now, I wanted to take a few steps back as we look at this beautiful flora and fauna here. If you'd like to know what those are, looks like a kingfisher to me. I'm not really sure. You can actually go online and look for the mosaic family, and there's a description of all of these different birds and plants. Here we're going to look at the town of Sepphoris. You can notice it's next to Mount Carmel. It's now called Sippori with a Z, and Sepphoris was actually the capital of Galilee. It's a beautiful place, and this is important. Its location, I'm going to just step back and show you. Here's Nazareth, and here's Sepphoris. Why is that important? Well, Mary married Joseph, and they lived in Nazareth. But tradition tells us that Mary actually grew up and was born in Sepphoris, and so there was a Byzantine era church, and that means between the 3rd and 6th century, 300 and 600 basically, not only honoring the Blessed Virgin Mary where she was born, but also her parents, Anna and Joachim, in Sepphoris. And you can see some of those ruins today. They were demolished many times over history. Okay, now if we're going from Nazareth, even today if you go from Nazareth, you'll always have to go through Cana of Galilee. And this is a place where there's a church which commemorates what you see here, and that's Mary again, the role of the woman talking to her son, the mother who says, do whatever he tells you. And she takes her observations to him, and he turns the water into wine. So Cana of Galilee is right here. It's actually quite large, like Nazareth is now. And so those are on the road from Magdala to Nazareth. You'll always pass through or right next to Cana. This is just a gorgeous rendition of the Good Shepherd with his sheep. You have an Israeli gazelle there, and it looks like the gazelle is going to take a nice bite into a pomegranate. And here I love these snails right here. And they're right next to the Via Maris. Remember I told you about that beautiful road, ancient road, trade road. And so you have another one of these gazelles, and you have doves. So something's happening here, it looks like. There's a lot of doves, and that's because we're next to Mount Arbel. I'm going to show you Mount Arbel right now, actually. Look in the background. That's Mount Arbel as the sun's going down in the west. Mount Arbel is next to what they call the Wadi Hammam that I've made reference to. Hammam means dove, the Valley of the Doves. And so when you had the people from Nazareth coming to take the road down to Jerusalem, they would oftentimes come and get their doves from this area. The people would come and trap them and sell them so they could take them to the temple as offerings. Now right here is the center, almost the center of this mosaic. And it's in Magdala because that's where we are right now. It's almost like the star saying, you are here. And of course we put the Magdala Rosetta there. You can see Duke and Alton. We had to add that in. It's certainly not ancient, but it does represent a very important part of Jesus' ministry where he's right here speaking with Mary Magdalene, and look at the smile on her face. And the most important thing about these mosaics is you'll always have a focus on the eyes. There's an encounter that's happening with those eyes, and you see the other women in the background. Right behind her, you've also got the synagogue, and that's the most important thing marked again with that sign on this map with the menorah. Because in that synagogue, we found that the only carved menorah outside of Jerusalem, okay, during the first century or first temple period. That's extremely significant. What we're going to do is just take a step back so you can see that we're right next, obviously, on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, filled with fish. Here's a port, that's what the anchor means. And we've got Jesus here. Remember we talked about him preaching from the boat, Duke and Alton. And here he is speaking with the people on the shore. And this is a place called Gennesaret. Now, if you look at the Bible, and you see, when is Gennesaret mentioned? It's mentioned after Jesus walks on water. And then they come and he speaks to the crowds. He gets out and he starts walking on this plain of Gennesaret, which is right here. You can walk there from here. And people are bringing him, if you notice in this mosaic, the sick, the infirm, people who just want to see him and be touched and healed by him. So he does a lot of healing. And you can see again, look at those eyes. They're looking at each each individual person in that crowd. And if we go up the coast, I've actually kayaked there and paddleboarded there to the place called Tabqa. Tabqa is the location of the multiplication of the loaves. And this is a rendition of a very ancient mosaic from the church there in Tabqa of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. And it's also a place of a number of hot springs. There's 7 springs in that area. So that's where Jesus multiplied those loaves and those fish for this great crowd of people. If we continue up the coast, we see this place of Capernaum. Again, we've got an anchor. So this is a port area. It's a fishing area, and it's all in the north. Now, what's beautiful is you see there's a city here, and it also has a synagogue. They have a beautiful 4th century, 5th century, I think, synagogue there in Capernaum. And underneath that is probably a 1st century synagogue, but it's also the town of Peter. And remember what happened here. This fella's throwing his crutch away because he was paralyzed, and he stands up. And that's, again, see that gaze? That's one of the miracles that happened in Capernaum. Right up the slope from Capernaum, you see the Mount of Beatitudes. And so you have that here, represented here. You've got the 8 Beatitudes as stars in the heavens. You know, those virtues, what we need to do, the new law, right? The new Torah. And there's Jesus preaching to those crowds on the Mount of Beatitudes. Okay, so let's go back down here. We have the, by the way, I wanted to show you the Via Maris. Okay, here's Magdala, right? That's Mount Arvilla. You see that gray road goes through Magdala, Gennesaret, Capernaum, and it starts going north. That's the trade route, all right? Now, we're talking about Capernaum right here. And I just wanted to go up north and follow this road. And as we do that, you'll see that the sea is being fed by all of these fish that are coming in from a river. That river is the Jordan River. You can actually go up there and walk by it. There's a Jordan River Park. And you see these beautiful heron that are many times up there. And a lot of these, you see the lovely birds and these plants. And this is also mosaics that are copied from the style, anyway, from the mosaic that you see in the church down in Tabqa. Now look at these beautiful swallows. Kites, you know, going up there. What's happening here? Well, we'll follow the Jordan up north, and we're going to go through the Hula Valley. This is a place where we have millions of birds that migrate from Russia, Eastern Europe, all the way down to Africa every year. Now, if we go up this way, we'll find, like I said before, Mount Hermon, and then a place called Caesarea Philippi. Not the same thing as Caesarea Maritima. Caesarea Philippi is actually up in the mountains, and this was a place where they had a temple to different gods. It was a sacred place. And on what they say, the Feast of Yom Kippur, where the Jews go into the temple, and it's the only time that the high priest goes in and pronounces the name of God, because it's an unpronounceable name, is when Jesus asked the apostles, "Who do you say that I am?" And it's when Peter, who's in this mosaic, says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." So on that day of Yom Kippur, he pronounces the name of God in Jesus Christ. Of course, this is the keys to the kingdom, and that's indicated right here. And that happened up here in the north in Caesarea Philippi. All right, so now, like I said, we see Gaulanitis. Let's take a look at this. We're going to head back down to the sea. That's Bethsaida Julius, and then you'll see Bethsaida also on the shore. There's 2 different areas that are called Bethsaida, but remember, it's an important place because here we've got a port city. It's a fisherman's village again, and that's where Peter and Andrew and Philip and James and John are all from, so it's an important village. And if we go just out on the lake quickly, we see when those folks' faith was tested. And look at the eyes of these apostles. They're freaked out. They don't know what to do. They're questioning. They're looking at each other. They're looking at us. And there's Jesus asleep on the boat. And they're like, what are we going to do? Because, see, it's a stormy sea. It happens in the evening time. So this is a beautiful rendition there. And lots of fish, lots and lots of fish. And let's go ahead and look in the center of the Sea of Galilee before we continue down the coast. And there we see the Duke and Alton boat. We see the fisherman's boat there. And so you've got these fishermen, don't we? They're there looking at each other, looking at us, looking at the fish. Look at those eyes. And you've got nets full of fish. Throw your net to the right. And he catches so many fish, he goes to Jesus and said, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Okay, we're going to look at this really quick city here. It's called Gamla, going back to the western part of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Golan Heights. Gamla means camel hump, and Gamla is important because just like Bethsaida, it's part of the Decapolis. It's those, here's a Roman road here, but the Decapolis means 10 cities, which is, those Greek-speaking pagan cities that Jesus went to. In fact, this is probably one of the most entertaining and best known. It's called Kursi. And if you look at the archaeological finds in Kursi, it's where you find a big monastery from the 4th century, right after Christianity was legalized in the Roman Empire, in other words, representing this scene where Jesus cures the demoniac and casts those demons into the pigs that rush down the slope into the sea. And I've actually seen wild boar here, so it's a pretty common sight. And look at how he's smiling. He's delighted. Jesus is like, no worries, we've got you. We've got you. Now, one of my favorite ancient cities here is Hippos, which means, of course, in Greek, horse. Susita is the word that the Jewish people use for this. It's actually the Aramaic word for horse. It's a horse-shaped mountain range behind it, and it was a very important city. And I hope this comes out on camera. Hippos is on like a little hillside looking over the sea right in front of Tiberias. All right, Tiberias. I don't know if you see it. It's right where the sunlight's coming in. And they were kind of like rival cities, and Hippos became a very Christian city. When there was rivalry between the Jews and the Christians, it became kind of a problematic relationship. Okay, we're going to look at some of these other Decapolis cities right here. You can see them. You can see wells here, Roman roads. Gadara is also an important city in the Decapolis. And then you have the Yarmouk. This is actually one of the tributaries. It feeds into the Jordan River, and that's why you have actually Gadara is, Hamath, Gader. This is a very important place for hot springs. So you can go there as well if you're interested in doing something like that when you're here. You see some of the flora and the fauna. And then you have down here, if you follow the southern part of the sea, the Jordan comes in at the north, goes to the sea, and comes out the south. And here it is, and we're going to go to Bethshain, which is the main city that leads to the Decapolis. And I just want to show you this as well. There's a word here that says Bethany across the Jordan. And Bethany across the Jordan means the place where Jesus was baptized. It's further south, that's why there's an arrow here. But what we did put in here was the mosaic of Jesus being baptized by John the Baptist. There's this Holy Spirit coming down. This is the Son of God, listen to him. And the last thing I just wanted to show you here is this particular scene of the apostles. They're talking, they're chatting, they're pointing toward Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, like I said, is here, it's toward the south. And this might be the time in the gospel where Jesus is saying, okay, we're going to go down to Jerusalem. And one of the apostles says, shall we go and die with him? So this is our beautiful map of Galilee. The artistic work was done by Maria Jesus Ortiz de Fernandez. And of course, a lot of people helped in this, including an important priest named Father Arieta. Sorry, he's a very important priest here in the Holy Land and a Franciscan. So, and Maria Jesus put a lapis lazuli stone, the most important stone, the most valuable stone, actually here in this Magdala mosaic. And I do want to challenge you to go ahead and take a look at that online and see if you would like to become part of the Magdala Mosaic family. You can become part of it as, of course, of a benefactor. You can adopt a letter, a figure, a plant, or a bird, or something like that. And it helps us to continue our programming here in Magdala. But you can also be a volunteer. There's a whole area of the mosaic dedicated to volunteers and those people who are intercessors, who pray for Magdala, partners who partner with us in different moments. And so also we have ambassadors, those that help promote Magdala. So with that, I just wanted to, I'll turn this back around again. Just finish our visit here today as the sun goes down, encouraging all of us to just be part of this family, part of the family with Mary Magdalene, with all the apostles and Jesus, because this is really, as Maria Jesus said once, it's an area between heaven and earth. This is where the kingdom of Christ begins, and that's what the true family does. We spread the kingdom of Christ. Apostle to the apostles, just like Mary Magdalene. God bless you.
So it's good that I stepped out of the wind, and together I think we can end our time together this Sunday just by praying again for the intercession of St. Mary Magdalene. Mary, you experienced the transforming love of Jesus and were freed from the bonds of evil. You became a disciple and a follower of Jesus, helped him in his ministry, and witnessed his life-changing power in others. You accompanied Jesus courageously and faithfully at the foot of the cross, beside his mother Mary. You encountered the risen Christ and recognized him in the garden. Be an example for me, that I may be freed from evil, encounter Jesus, follow him, and serve him as you did. Be an example for me of fidelity to Jesus in the face of adversity and at the foot of the cross. Be an example for me, above all, by accepting him alive and risen in my life. Be an example for me so as to bear witness to him and love, and his love for those around me, my family, friends, and fellow workers. May Jesus live and reign in my heart. St. Mary Magdalene, pray for me. Amen. And in the spirit of family, we will see each other tomorrow as we have our final tour until the day of St. Mary Magdalene's feast here in Magdala. God bless you all.